whether or not he can duplicate what he just did. I always use the saying, is it easier to write the first bestseller or the second? And I think in the league, it's easier to write the first. But now you got to replicate with everybody gunning for you, everybody knowing what you do. Everyone's going to watch the tape all off season, find your tendencies. This is what coordinators and defensive coaches and quality control people get paid to do. And that's going to be what they're working on. And if you're Daniels, you got to stay one step ahead of them. When you leave and you pull the ball down and roll to your left, you are going to run. When you roll the ball, throw the ball, run into your right, you're going to probably keep the play alive and try to throw it down the field. Those little tendencies get found out over the offseason. Like you, though, I think what Washington's unearthed here is a floor-elevating star and a top 10 quarterback in the league as of the start of next season. Very likely. And then the only thing left to debate really is, what is the ceiling? Mm-hmm. What are we talking about here? In a league where you've got your Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Mahomes tier, so to speak, and Mahomes is the best of that group, obviously, but that's your Mount Rushmore. Can he crash the party? I mean, is he someone who could be a perennial MVP candidate who, because he's on your team, to what you were just saying, like you're going to win 10-ish games every single year, surpassing the Hurtses and those guys that have the good years and the bad years? Mm-hmm. Or is he on that Jalen Hurts level, which is fine too? He's played in a couple Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl, but where it's not always going to be special. It's not always going to be elite, but he's a winner and he keeps you in a lot of games and he's a dual threat. And maybe the numbers aren't going to be transcendent and win MVP awards, but you're going to have a lot of success. We're going to find that out starting this coming season with Jayden Daniels. But just the fact that they have finally answered the question, that they finally don't have to worry about this anymore, assuming he can stay healthy, that they don't have to deal with quarterback for years to come, they are in the catbird seat in the NFL. This is the difference between the teams that have a chance and don't, is just, do you have the right quarterback? And it's a very small group of teams that do, and they're finally in it. It's been decades since they were in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the shtick I used to do for various teams around the league, but a lot of GMs and a lot of heads of player personnel and scouts and people would pat themselves on the back and walk around like they were geniuses. And my whole point a lot of times was, your key card still works because you have blanket quarterback. For a long time, it was in Green Bay, where I didn't think they'd actually manage the roster all that great. But that Aaron Rodgers makes you a lot smarter, makes everybody look good, until, of course, everyone wore out their welcome. We know the story. But when you have this correct, and it's not just the ability, it's everything that surrounds him, right? He's the sun here of the solar system, and everybody kind of surrounding him. There's a calm, there's a confidence, there's a preparation. It's not fraudulent. It's not, once a week for Instagram where you're pulling the tire or jumping over this one thing and letting everybody know about the grind. It's the actual grind. There's a difference between doing it and saying you're going to do it for clicks and for credit. You actually do it because it makes you a great football player. And there's a killer instinct there, and I hate that cliche, but that's what it is, where if you give him a chance, you're going to get beaten. I mean, that's what happened. We saw it. It wasn't one of those things where it happened one time. It happened multiple times. Again, the thing I tried to say this the other day, I was doing a radio hit somewhere, and they were asking me about, I said, and finally, by the way, about Jayden Daniels. And I said, here's the thing that people I don't think are talking enough about. Their running game was irrevocably broken. You can decide why. It's up to you. Smart people that have your debate, enjoy it. You want to tell me about this thing, that thing, defense is figured out, Brian Robinson lost a step, offensive line, this? The answer is probably yes. I don't care. They basically played keep away and clock management ball with a rookie quarterback and no running game. That was their recipe to win game after game after game after game in must-win situations down the stretch. That's beyond incredible.
Well, it's just the first time I've ever seen a team with a rookie quarterback put so much on a guy's plate and still keep winning. There have been rookie QBs that have won in playoff games or gotten to championship games in their conference, but they've done it with a defense-first operation where they're just handing it off constantly and playing caretaker. And Washington was being dragged into the fight by Daniels, making plays with his legs, running around, making plays with his arms, throwing the ball, or extending plays and making big plays, throwing downfield. And he just did it throughout the regular season and throughout the playoffs. It was amazing. So let's separate him, because I think we've said what needs to be said there. They've got their starting quarterback and the only guy, hopefully, that takes a snap next year. But Both of their veteran backups are free agents. They have nearly 30 free agents on the roster. You're looking at offense, defense, special teams. And two of them are their QBs in Marcus Mariota, who came over from the Eagles, and Jeff Driscoll, who most recently played for the Browns. We didn't see Driscoll play in any games, but remember, Driscoll outplayed Mariota, I thought, in the preseason. He had some really good moments. I kind of think he can play as a backup. He's got some Mariota tendencies. He's mobile.
Yeah, a little
he
run around.
Runs a lot. He's an athlete. He can make a play or two. The arm is not great, but it's enough. Honestly, who am I talking about? Like Mariota or Driscoll?
Right.
It kind of reminds me of him. But Mariota was so damned good when he played this year. You think about the games he got into, okay? So I think he threw 3 passes in the Cleveland game. They won by 1 million. But when Daniels got hurt against Carolina, Mariota came in and they scored 40 points in that game. They had scored at the time of the injury to Daniels, I think 7 points. He went 18 of 23, threw for 205 yards, completing almost 80%, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and he ran effectively in that game for 34 yards as well. It was a Jayden Daniels stat line. They took Daniels out of the offense. They dropped Mariota in with a claw machine, and they didn't miss a beat. It was the same offense. It was the same success through the air. It was the same success on quarterback runs. It was as if Daniels was still out there. What a compliment to Marcus Mariota. Then came the final week of the season, week 18, against the Dallas Cowboys, when Daniels actually had his worst week of the season. If you remember, in the first half of that game, he stunk up the joint.
Yeah.
And the whole offense did. It wasn't just him, but he was not right. The Dallas Cowboys in that game had a plan that was working against Washington. Then they made the switch at halftime, not because Daniels struggled, but because they wanted him to be healthy for the Bucs playoff game coming up. Mariota comes in and goes 15 of 18, 83% of his passes complete for $160, 2 more touchdowns, no picks. So that's 4 touchdowns, no picks in the 2 games he played in. He only took a couple sacks, and he ran 5 times for 56 yards, including a 33-yard 4th down run.
Huge one.
Also rushed for a touchdown. Again, it was Daniels-esque. If you take Mariota's name off the 2 performances and put Daniels' name on it, they just are kind of middle-of-the-pack performances for him this season that blend in really well with how he played. That is how good Mariota was. It's also a compliment to Cliff Kingsbury and the offense that twice you had to play a half or more of football without Daniels, and your offense had some of its best halves of the season.
Indeed.
It would seem to me like Mariota needs to be a priority then to bring back at just 31 years old.
So now, it obviously takes 2 to tango. If Mariota somehow believes that, and again, I'm just making this up, I would disagree with this, but just maybe, hey, it's not a very deep quarterback draft. So team that's in need of some stability there, I'm making them up. How about the Raiders? Or let's say the Giants don't get Stafford in the sweepstakes or whatever. You want me to be the guy? I can do that. I can do what I just did here in Washington. Look at the scheme. Look at the design. If you give me something similar, I'll put up a pretty decent season. You won't bottom out. Now, again, it's not something that I would do personally if I was a team. I would just not be in that business of having him start 17 games. I think that's a recipe for mediocrity. But this fit here was perfect. If he's cool with continuing this role, I'll give him a raise to do it. Honestly, like, to me, it's less about his play in those moments, and it was awesome. I don't disagree with a single word you said because it's factual. It's what happened. To me, the value is Daniels swore by him, and think of that Atlanta game when there's nothing happening. There's no plays that are being run that are worth the damn. It's just Daniels going, and he gets his clock cleaned right at the goal line on one of those where he's bouncing around like a pinball, gets the wind knocked out of him, even to the point that Washington has to call a timeout. And we've all seen the video of it. Mariota comes over to him, picks him up, says, "Get your wind." Gives him kind of that last minute Rudy style pep talk. Go use your God-given abilities to go win the game. Whatever that is, I'm paying for that.
He lived it. He's the number 2 pick. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. They have a good rapport. That's not nothing to me. Like, that's part of it. But the guy played awesome in your offense. Like, he literally played at the level of your starter in a very small sample, who was the talk of the league, the rookie of the year, and 5th or 6th or whatever in MVP voting. Want to pose this to you guys, though, on the MGM National Harbor listener lines next. How big of a deal would it be to keep Mariota around, or do you think it's kind of a replacement level thing? Backup quarterback, a lot of guys could come in for a couple quarters and play okay. Doesn't matter if he walks, insignificant. Driscoll or some other guy like Mariota, whether it's Justin Fields or somebody else, could come in here and be similar.